My name is Łukasz Fiszer. I'm a senior JavaScript developer at GFT. And the talk I will be presenting today is titled NPM Script as an Automation Tool. The real goal of this talk is to answer the question, do we really need tools like grunt, gulp, broccoli, branch, or any other JavaScript automation tool? Do we really need them anymore? Do they fit into our modern front-end ecosystem, in our front-end workflow? So you may find this question a little bit disrupting, because finally, the task runners, they do solve a lot of problems. Like the first problem, of course, that they solve is automation of tasks and lack of manual typing any commands. Another thing that they solve is that they allow us to write modular and composable tasks, so we don't repeat ourselves when we write our build or automation configuration. They allow us also very easily to watch files and to react and do some action when a file changes. They also allow our build tools to be cross-platform, which is very important if you're working in an enterprise environment and you're coding against Windows and Unix machines together. And they also claim that the maintainers of the tools, they claim that it's easier to use them than writing some custom scripts or writing some shell commands. So these are the list of problems that the modern task runners like gulp or grunt solve. But at the same time, in my opinion, they create even more problems. So the first problem is that we have multiple competing non-standard tools. So before there was grunt, now there is gulp. Maybe tomorrow there will be another hot, new, shiny automation tool. And we have also problem with maintaining those tools. Grunt was a very popular at some moment, and now it's, well, there were some people saying that it will be even abandoned. There is now a version 1.0 that will be released soon, but we are still not sure if it will stay a long time in the ecosystem. And because those tools are not compatible with each other, if you want to migrate from one to another, you have to rewrite your whole build configuration from scratch. They also add a layer of complexity above the tools that they use underneath. So if you have a problem in your build, if you see some error message, sometimes you are not sure if it comes from the plugin, the grunt or gulp plugin, the grunt or gulp itself, or the tool that these plugins use underneath. So this makes sometimes debugging of your build and automation task, it makes debugging them quite hard. It also adds this layer of complexity, so that often in teams there is this one guy who wrote in the whole build configuration. He's the grunt or gulp guy, and when something is wrong, something is not working, he's the only one that has this knowledge. So there is also this I call it a Swiss knife attitude. Those tools like grunt or gulp are so popular that people often overuse them and use them for things that they really don't meant to be, like they solve the problems that should be solved somewhere else, but not in the automation or not in the build process. And as an example, I found is, for example, there is this ng HTML.js plugin. It exists for gulp and grunt and other build system probably as well. So this tool is used in Angular applications, and its whole purpose is to populate in a tricky way the cache of Angular HTTP service, so that when you require a template with the template URL property, it's actually not requested from the server, but it's requested from the cache. And this tool is really complex, the documentation is long, you have a lot of configuration options. But like the real solution to this problem of not having to download your templates. It's just to use some, like if you're using require.js or Browserify or even Webpack, you can just require the HTML files as text files, and it will be this tool and not grunt or gulp that will inline your HTML file, and it will solve the problem that shouldn't be solved with the build tool. Another problem with tools like grunt or gulp is that their workflow and their philosophy is not really compatible with all the tools that we are using. For example, there is Browserify and especially Watchify. They're using streams and incremental builds. And because they are using streams, the Gulp team decided to even blacklist the Browserify Gulp plugin, because they say, like, if some tool works with inputs the stream and outputs the stream, it shouldn't be a Gulp plugin. But people still try to fit this tool, fit Browserify into their Gulp workflow. So as a result, we have like 20 lines of code that people are putting inside their Gulp file, instead of using just simple command that will do exactly the same, but will be much more maintainable and much less verbose. Another problem I find that I found with using grunt or gulp is that their rich ecosystem of plugins. This is their biggest advantage, but at the same time the biggest disadvantage, because plugins are often abandoned, they are out of date, they are incomplete, they don't support the same options as the original tool that they use underneath. So yeah, you may find that you want to use some new feature that has been coded into the tool that you use, but the gulp or grunt plugin doesn't support it yet. So that's a really, really big problem. And finally, grunt and gulp enforce us to install the command line tools as a global package. And I think this is really problematic, especially if you are working with multiple projects at the same time, and even more if you are working on some older project that back in the time were using some previous version of Gulp, for example. So when you are switching between projects, you will end up juggling between different versions of Gulp of grunt. So I think that the usage, the global installation, that is something that really shouldn't happen if you are working with multiple projects on the same time. And well, this is something that I'm really not a fan of. And it's not just only me, because I remember about 1 year ago, I was really upset with Gulp and this Browserify thing. And I started to look for some alternatives. And the only article I found in the internet at that time was a post by Substack, which is author of Browserify. And he encouraged in his blog post to use npm run as an automation tool. But at the time, there was not many people responded to it, and we continued to using grunt and gulp as we were using them before. But recently, I noticed that there are more and more people talking about it, about using NPM as a build system. There are discussions on Twitter, there are a lot of blog posts, so there is a certain shift in the community. And I think the reason behind this shift, this new approach, is that because we create more complex applications which use more complex tools like Webpack, like Browserify, like Bower, because we write complex application and we use complex tools to write them, I think we need less complicated automation process for this. A good example of this is Webpack, because if you are using Webpack as our primary tool for front-end development, then we don't need anymore all these JS bundling tools, less bundlers. SaaS plugins, etc., etc. Webpack is doing everything for ourselves, and trying to put it into our gulp build system, it really doesn't make any sense. So is the NPM scripts an answer for all of these questions? I think partially yes, and I would like to present it more in details. How does it work, and how can you make use of it? So to start with, like, how does the NPM scripts work? Because maybe some of you are not familiar with it. So it's very simple. In your package JSON, there is this script property which accepts an object, and in every key of this object is the command, and the value for this key is the shell script that you will execute. And it can be anything. Yeah, it can be a shell command. You can execute some JavaScript script with Node. Well, you can do anything that you would do in your command line. And to run the script, you just type npm run and the name of the command. And this is this simple. And the real power of npm scripts is that they are including node modules /.bin into their path. So what does it mean? If you're installing some modules locally, and those modules have an executable binary, there is this folder inside node modules called .bin that will have all of these binaries included. So you can actually execute the scripts by typing node modules /.bin /browserify, for example. But this path is included into the path variable when you are running npm script. So instead of typing this whole node modules blah blah blah, you just type the name of the command as it would be a global command that is globally available in your system. So this helps us to encapsulate, and you can have the tools installed locally for every project, and you can have different versions of those tools available in different projects. So what about watching stuff? Because this is something that in which Grunt or Gulp are really good. So surprisingly, many of the tools that you are using inside your automation workflow, they already have a watch option or watch version. So you can use them out of the box. And actually, I find that they work much better just because these tools are aware of the dependency graph. And if you are just watching some files with Grunt of Gulp, you may be also watching files that are not really required, for example, in your SAS style sheets. So there may be some file that is not really required by any of your main files, but it still be watched, and and the task will still be reloaded if the file changes. If the tool that you are using doesn't have the watch option, there are some node modules that do the watching for you. So there is one which has a very weird name. It's called Chokidar, and it has the Chokidar CLE version. And it's actually one of the most popular NPM package because it is the tool that all of this automation tool like Grunt and Gulp, they use underneath. So you can use what they are using, but directly as a command line tool. And there are other ones like onChange and watch. And you can configure these tools to trigger any command you want when a certain file changes. So what about composition? Yeah, we say that Grunt or Gulp are really good at composition. So, well, you can do composition in shell script as well. You need to type double ampersand, and you will find that the commands are executing next after another. But you can do even better. There is this package which is called npm run all, and this package allows you to run multiple tasks inside your npm scripts, and it also supports asterisks. So in the example above, in the build example, you can see that I have a build task that will actually execute all other builds in sequence. And Similarly, this tool has a parallel option, which allows you to run tasks in parallel, as you would normally want to run them when you are watching stuff. So again, I just type npm run watch, and my script is executing all the watching tasks that I specified. There are some other interesting things when it comes to npm scripts that I think are not very well known. So the first thing is that you can have a config property in your package.json, and the content of this config object will be available inside your npm scripts as an environmental variable. So in this example, I specified JS variable, or JS key, and I use it for my linting, for the JS hint, and I use the same property for this JS CS, so the tool that does code quality stuff. Another thing that is also not, I think, not well known is that you can pass arbitrary arguments to your npm scripts. So this really helps you composing your command. So in the example, you have a test command that you execute mocha, and you have also a watch test command, and you are using the same command as for the standard command, but after double dash, you're passing the argument, and this way you're making mocha run in the watch mode. Other thing that is interesting is that npm scripts have this concept of hooks. And so these are the scripts that are executed before or after you execute some npm command. So there is this npm version command that is used to bump the version package into your JSON in your package JSON. So if you are going up with the version of your package, you just type npm version minor major or path, and the npm will update the version by yourself. So if you have you can imagine that you have a pre-version hook, so automatically npm will execute whatever you want. So in this example, we see that there are tests that are executed before any version bump. So this is very practical, and it ensures that there are no tests failing if you are bumping the version of your package. Another thing with hooks is, for example, a post-install hook. So this is a practical thing if you are deploying to services like Heroku, for example, and this hook will be executed after Heroku installed all your dependencies, and it will then execute the build command, and both, if you enabled caching in your Heroku deployment, you will see that both dependencies and the build, the result of the build, are cached. So then when you restart your server, you start your service, you don't waste time building when the service is starting up. So what about Windows compatibility? Yeah, we say that gulp and grunt were made with cross-platform approach out of the box. So surprisingly, a lot of commands, a lot of bash commands that we are used to using when we are working in the Unix or macOS environment. So a lot of commands, they already work. So you have this double ampersand operator, double pipe operator, and piping and redirecting streams work as well in Windows Bash. There are other, not maybe tools, but commands that don't work out of the box in the Windows shell, but you can use an equivalence from npm packages that will do exactly the same stuff, but they are cross-compatible. And unfortunately, there are two things that, well, you cannot use in your npm scripts if you want them to be cross-compatible, and this is the semicolon operator and environmental variables, because the syntax in Windows is completely different. So you may say, yeah, this is, well, if this is great, but there must be some drawbacks. Of course they are. So npm scripts are simple, really simple, and you may find that they are too simple for your configuration. So if you have a very complex build system, if you have a parameter build, it may not be the good solution for you. But on the second hand, if you are writing some small or medium-sized application, you may find that in 10 lines or 15 lines of code, you will get the same configuration as you would get with 100 or 200 lines of your grunt file. And the next drawback is because package JSON is JSON, so you have the limitations of JSON, of course. So you have no comments, no multi-lines. So this is sometimes very troublesome. So you have to comment your task. If you need to comment, you need to add some comments otherwhere in your README or somewhere else. And well, you have no multi-line, so. And the last thing is that there is no uniformization, as you don't run this command in the same way. In the grunt or gulp ecosystem, the plugins are made in the same way, so you expect them to work also in the same way. With different tools, if you run them directly from their command line, you will get different log outputs. Maybe they will they accept arguments in a different way. So this is kind of a drawback. So the question, should we really start using it right away? So the question is, of course, the answer is, it depends. I would suggest you to give it a try. If you create some new project or toy project, try to use npm scripts instead of grunt or gulp or any other build tool, and probably you will find this approach very, very helpful for you. Even if you completely disagree with everything that I say and you still want to stick with those tools that you are using now, there is one thing that you can and you should do. It's aliasing your grunt or gulp commands into the npm scripts. And by using this, let's say that you configure your whole continuous integration environment, your build system, etc., etc. And instead of specifying those tools to execute grunt or gulp commands right away, when they execute the npm scripts command instead of it, the result will be the same. But if one day you want to switch the tool that you are using, you won't have to change your build configuration, you won't have to change your continuous integration configuration. So this is like a level of abstraction, like a layer of, like an alias. The things that I would recommend to the tasks, the grunt or build, grunt or gulp tasks that I would recommend to move away from your grunt or gulp file are the ones that are not really made well to work with them. So these are tools like Browserify. So as you see in the example, it's very hard to make it work inside gulp. Webpack is the same, because if you use Webpack inside your gulp, you're basically running just the Webpack command. So it makes really sense to run the command in your shell. And if you use this approach and you combine it with the aliasing approach, you can end up with having this this approach that some of the commands, some of the automation tasks you are running directly from the command line, and some of them, maybe which are more complex, you are running them still from your gulp or grunt file. And the last thing is that you should really watch the evolution of this npm scripts ecosystem or approach, because I checked yesterday on the npm GitHub repository, and half of the feature requests that people are making in their issue tracking system are about how to make npm scripts more reliable and more easy to use. So I think there will be a lot of improvements and a lot of evolution that will be shipped with new version of npm, and this is something that we should really follow, and well, we'll see what will be the result. So thank you.
Yes, I have a question about sharing scripts configuration between applications. For example, in our case, we are building multiple applications that are basically the same in the structure of the build, the test, the coverage, and etc. But how with Grunt, for example, we've made some command line tool that allows us to use those and build those applications in the same manner. But how to do that? Is there a common pattern to do some encapsulation of those comments and sharing them between different applications without some global installation of some package? Is there something like that?
No, I'm afraid there is nothing like this. The only thing that comes to my mind is to have some tool that will generate your package.json file when you start a new project. So the kind of scaffolding of your package.json. But I think probably in your example, this is what I say. If your application build system is really complex, it has some parameters, if it is configurable, then maybe it is not a good solution for you. But maybe what you could do as well, with NPM scripts you can run custom, any like JavaScript code as well. So maybe you can write some scripts by yourself, and then of course in your scripts you can do everything what you want.
Okay, thank you.
Another one? So thank you.